Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of videos. Today I wanted to show you another of my 45 minute games on the Lichess League. Another fun game, lots of exciting stuff happened, lots of tactics, and let's just see how we go. So e4, c5, I play for the Smith-Morra, which you've seen in some of my previous videos. I do like to play the Smith-Morra against the Sicilian, and after c takes I played c3, d takes c3, knight takes c3, so I'm down a pawn, but I get some nice active play as a result. Knight to c3, knight to c6 was played, I played my knight to f3, a6 and bishop to c4. All normal so far. My opponent played e6, so trying to blunt my bishop from potentially coming to this diagonal, and I now castled here. And I was fully expecting some shenanigans with maybe queen coming to c7, which I think sets up the Siberian trap. So I'll just show you what that kind of looks like. So if I do a move like this, I believe, can he do some crazy stuff here? No, he can't actually. Maybe I think of a different line actually. So I tell a lie. That doesn't exist. So in actual fact, what happened in the game? So there's the castles. d6 was played. I played my queen to e2, bishop to d7, rook to d1, bishop to e7, bishop to f4, and e5. So as I say, my main idea is just to get my rooks to these squares, get all my pieces to nice squares, and then hopefully have some attack going. e5 was now played. And I guess one of the problems with e5 is it now relinquishes the this square for me, and not only that, this pawn is now a little bit weak. So I've got essentially a target to go for in this position. The problem I've got is what I have to do with this bishop, and in this position I've decided to go back to g3, and now I'm outside of the book line. Better is actually bishop to e3 in this position. It maintains it. I guess the problem with the other line is, and I think what I was a little bit worried about, was this knight f6 idea followed by potentially the knight coming to h5 and just looking to simply swap off the bishop. Bear in mind, black in this sort of position, because he is up a pawn, he'll be looking to try and do as many exchanges as possible, and this is quite an uncomfortable way. It's quite uncomfortable to try and meet this, because as soon as the knight captures the bishop, I would have to maybe jeopardize my pawn structure. So I guess what I was thinking here is after this, which actually did happen in the game, I actually even had to think about, do I play h3 here? And I've kind of lost a tempo in doing this, because really I could have played h3 here straight away, then played bishop to f4, and if that happened, if e5 did come, I could then retreat my bishop back to h2. Everything's all fine, but that didn't happen in the game. So what happened instead is this happened, knight came to f3, so now there's this potential idea coming. So what I decided to play here was a little bit crazy. I decided to jump into this square. I thought, why not make use of the square? And for the most part, my plan, in fact, sort of worked. The key line, I think, in this is after knight captures, bishop captures, I haven't really got a whole lot here. I think black does absolutely fine with things like queen to b6, followed by castles. I think black is doing okay here. There's not really any problems for me. I'm not threatening any immediate checkmates or anything here. Everything seems to be well defended. But he didn't do that. Instead he castled, which I was a little bit shocked to see. And you can already see there's a potential problem for black. If I captured this knight, he would probably have to capture this way to avoid this pawn from falling. So let's see what happened. I captured here, and now instead of capturing this, which I expected, but as I say, if he did capture this way, the king would be totally exposed. So I've got loads of plays. I'll just show you what that scenario looked like. So I could actually jump my knight into h4, maybe even follow up with a move like queen to h5. I mean, there just seems to be a lot of play for me here. I mean, maybe I'll just have a quick look at just some of these lines. I didn't actually look at this. So let's say Queen to C here maybe, and then I don't know, something like this. It looks pretty good anyway for me. I mean, I can even at some point get away with, after the bishop coming back, maybe shifting my rook along to G3 potentially, which could be quite interesting. So there's a lot of play for me, definitely, with that, with the king's side just being pried open. But instead he captured with a bishop, which surprised me, because now this allows me to take this pawn. And I looked at my position, I thought, I'm doing absolutely fine here. I mean, I'm now threatening to come in with my other rook and deal some dangerous damage to this bishop. This bishop is pinned as well, so it's going to be very difficult for him to move his queen. So I thought to myself, this was looking pretty good. So what happened in the actual game? So queen came to E7. I guess this makes sense. He has to get the queen out of the pin, and it's now also threatening to capture this rook. And it's interesting here that the engine now recommends coming back to rook to D2, but many of you, and including myself, I really liked this move, and I thought this was totally winning. I thought, I've got my rooks on this lovely open file, this has got to be good for me. The problem is now my opponent played bishop to G4, and I've got so many problems in this position now. Already he's threatening ideas such as jumping in with this knight, trying to exchange off this knight and create some pawn problems for me. Furthermore, as soon as this knight comes here, my rook is no longer defended. So it comes also with an attack on the queen. There's just, put it this way, there's just so many problems in this position. And I fought for a very long time here. I was almost kind of like going, oh my god, how do I get out of this? This is really tough. It looks as though I'm just losing. The computer here is now recommending rook 6 to D5, which is what I did look at. I was a little bit worried after this of actually the bishop coming back to here. In actual fact, this is fine for me, as I can now just retreat the rook to D2. I think my position's doing okay here. Okay, he's got this exchange, but I think I'm doing fine. I've got a nice, still got nice control on these files. There'll probably be a lot of exchanges here. It's interesting here now, it's just saying totally even. I wonder actually if it's worth just exchanging everything off. Queen takes here. Okay, there's a draw scenario here. I think actually if you capture this way as well, this is probably fine too. So yeah, lots of exchanges. This is probably just enter a dead drawn endgame here. You'll notice the pawn structures are totally symmetrical. It's very difficult for either side to really come up with much of a win here. The only thing going for me is the fact I've got one move ahead of my opponent, but it probably wouldn't be enough. So going back then, what happened in the actual game? I guess just another move very quickly that I could have played, and I did think about it, but I just decided in the end it just wasn't worth it. I did look at H3. The problem I've got was I was a little bit worried about the knight coming here. In actual fact, this is all fine because I can now capture off this knight, and well, my opponent would have to take the knight with his bishop. G takes, E takes, E5 comes in, and this is quite interesting. There's a little bit of counterplay here that perhaps I didn't foresee, and it's interesting. It's certainly interesting, but I can just see the engine is jumping up and down. It probably gives black slight equality here. I'm really just playing for an even position, but certainly an interesting continuation that I could have played. Instead, what happened here is I decided to play my queen to E3. This just had the idea of if the knight came over here in that scenario, at the very least I can jump my queen over to A3 to defend the rook. So that was the idea, and I thought this was probably the only way I can stop all these different threats from occurring. So after knight came here, I moved my queen over to a3, rook came to c8, and now it's very difficult for me. I haven't really got anything in this position. He's going to be swapping off some pieces, and well, I'll be honest with you, he probably has a fine game here. Another problem for me is I'd love to just take off here, but he can actually capture this way. After a few exchanges, I think it is black who is better in this position. You'll notice I've got these pawn weaknesses here. If let's say I captured this knight, oh okay, obviously this is still a problem actually. So after maybe king here, actually rook to c8 is really nice. Actually, I didn't see that. I mean, it does allow me to come here, but I think even more direct would perhaps be just doing this. Takes, going up a pawn. Oh, I guess I've got this coming back, but this pawn's defended. Interesting. Okay, so maybe it's not as bad as I thought, but there's a problem here. I'm down a pawn. Not only that, I've also got these double pawns, but interestingly enough, there is potential for opposite coloured bishops here. So actually, I can probably still hold this. If he can, I can still hold this if I can exchange off this knight maybe for my bishop. Even if I'm 2 pawns down, it is holdable, those positions. So certainly interesting if that did happen. Right. So what happened in the actual game? So let's go back. So here I decided to go a little bit crazy again. I like to go crazy in a lot of my games, and I decided to capture here. And I thought, okay, I need to play for this counter attack because the endgame looks dreadful for me. You've seen that it's interestingly enough, when I actually look at the endgame, it's not as bad as I thought it was, but looking at all the pawns, I just thought, no, this is no good. I've got to play for complications here, but this is just losing for me. After e takes d4, I played e5 to start striking forward. It looks really dangerous, but in actual fact, it's totally fine here. But my opponent did make a key mistake. He captured his with the bishop. If he had just calmly captured this knight, I haven't really got anything here. After queen captures, the bishop could probably calmly capture here. I've got absolutely nothing. I've lost a lot of tempo in this position, and I haven't really got anything for it. In actual fact, I am just simply down a piece from the looks of it. So I'm down an exchange, and actually I think a pawn as well. Well, in fact, is it? Yeah, just a pawn and an exchange. So definitely not a good position to go into if I was travelling into an endgame. But instead he captured with the bishop, which I was very happy to see. The problem here is, and I think I didn't really spend enough time on this position, I should have now played rook captures here. The point being, if after a takes here, which was the move I was worried about, b captures, rook captures, I can capture the bishop. Notice here that this bishop is under attack, so we'd have to move it to e6. I can swap it off, f takes. I am doing fine. You'll notice here that the material is even. I've got 2 pieces against a rook. This is holdable. I can certainly play for a draw at the very least. Otherwise, there's a little interesting imbalance. The problem for me, just practically speaking, is I've got to find some way of trying to get these pawns, which is easier said than done. Furthermore, I've got this horrible looking pawn structure on the left hand side, so it's certainly not an easy position to play. So I'll just do an example line. Rook to c8. I guess he's already threatening just to come straight into this square, which is certainly something I didn't really want to see. Knight to d3, rook to c2. So I'd have to lose a pawn here. But I guess after a move like this, the problem now is for the black rook, although it looks really good, it's actually a little bit trapped over here, so he has to kind of waste a move to get himself out. It's hard to see how I can hold this actually. It's still saying drawn, drawn, drawn. but it's certainly a difficult position to defend here. I wouldn't really like to try and take on these pawns all that much. Okay, so going back then, what happened in the actual game? So instead of this, I played a mistake. I instead captured with the queen. After rook to d6, I went all guns blazing here, but this in fact loses. It was quite funny. I mean, I thought there was some potential problems that he could face. So I think one idea I was looking at was if, let's say, the king, well, let's say, I don't know, something like a6, which could have happened maybe. I mean, I capture here, which comes with a check. It is pretty bad for him, but this would never happen in the position. Again, I was just playing for complications. I thought maybe this would be quite interesting. I think even rook here works in actual fact, which was another move I considered. Say -3, so certainly better for black here. After well, even after I start exchanging things off, this is fine. The rook and the bishop trump the two pieces, and he's also got this passed pawn, and he's got potential of putting the rook behind to start pushing things down. So certainly something I was not looking forward to. Okay, so what happened in the game? So after this exchange, my opponent played rook to c6, really nice move, as now all my threats evaporate. So I threw in the check anyway, but he has this lovely move, which was just capturing here on c4, which is what he did. After bishop takes on c4, rook to c8, and a really nice finishing move here. You'll notice now I've got no way of defending. Well, I can defend it, but it's just pretty much lost. So if I move my knight to d2, let's say, rook to c1, knight comes to f1, and now look at this. This is beautiful. Comes in here, and this knight is lost. So a continuation that I did think would be interesting, but in actual fact totally loses. So yeah, it was a really, as I say, very interesting game. I think I over panicked a little bit against this bishop to g4. I think my position was actually not as bad as I thought it was at this point, although there was a lot of practical problems with the knight coming here. If I'd stayed calm and just maybe moved my rook along here, I think I would have been fine. Furthermore, if we go a little bit earlier in the position, I think I need to start getting used to before playing the bishop to f4 is sometimes throwing in this h3 idea is certainly a nice way of continuing, as it creates this lovely hole, I guess essentially a bolt hole for the bishop to run into. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll hope to keep uploading some more games over the next few days. Take care.